Here we are again with another sow's ear to be turned into a silk purse. This is an economy kilt made in the subcontinent, and some things impress me, some things don't. Some things are what I've come to expect. What impresses me is it's the label says it's 70% wool, but it doesn't feel like wool. It kind of feels like wool, but that's neither here nor there. But the problem with that then is I don't know how the wax, if the wax chalk will react to it and possibly not come off when I iron it. I also don't know how it'll press and such like that. But that's all right. So what I've done is, we can see with this originally, it sort of fit. The measurement for the person's waist is about right, but this was bought by a family member and sent to him as a gift. But it was far too long. So I've reduced it from the top to its correct length. The apron pleats weren't particularly deep, and there was an even number of pleats, which creates a problem when you're pleating to the stripe, because the eye is going to identify if the center back of the pleat is a seam center back of the kilt is a seam rather than a pleat. Your eye is going to pick that up, even if you don't know what you're looking at. It's going to look strange. So I've unpicked the aprons on both sides, which was a hell of a job, because whoever sewed this, it's all sewn with a sewing machine. They used a tremendously short stitch. And they obviously enjoy using their sewing machine because they sewed it back and forth to make sure that nobody was ever going to be able to take this apart. I did, at the risk of some of my sanity. But unfortunately, as careful as I was, I did mar the cloth on one spot on the inside apron. There's a knot there that I can't even see the stitches of, but I can certainly feel. And the cloth is a little bit nicked at that point. And unfortunately, that's still going to be visible when I reduce. Now, admittedly, it's going to be on the inside apron, so I may be reduced to cutting out, because that lump, it's like it's really noticeable. I may be reduced to cutting that out and doing a neat patch. But in any case, I've reduced by 2 pleats on one side, 1 pleat on the other, so we come to an odd number of pleats. One thing that does impress me is their method of pleating. They haven't pleated it to one stripe or to one element, but they're alternating, and they alternate between the blue stripe, the double blue stripe, and the plain. So I've identified this. This is going to be the new center of the front apron. So this is the new center back pleat. So it's a little bit asymmetrical when you book the pleats aren't book matched as you count out, but now that I've reduced it in height, I've gotten the aprons apart, I've changed it from an even to an uneven number of pleats. The next stage, I've ironed it, and fortunately, with a very hot steam, I've managed to take the old creases out, which was a relief. There is some marking on the cloth, however. But from here, I'm going to re-sew the inside apron to its finished shape. I'm going to sew, because the fell has to go down to this mark here, so I'm going to sew each of these fell seams again. I've opened up this one pleat so that I can put a buttonhole there. Now, the original maker hadn't thinned this out, which is an advantage to me, because I could play with the cloth a little bit more, and it left some doors open, as it were, as far as decisions I could make. So restore. I'm going to again lengthen the fell seams to their new proper length. Re-sew this and leave the buttonhole open. Flip it over, thin this out, do the steeking, and then pretty much carry on as any custom kilt. One thing that I could have predicted, and annoys me, is this habit, and I've seen it both in kilts made in Scotland and elsewhere, of determining where the edge of the kilt's going to be, or the apron's going to be, and then just adding a seam allowance and cutting it, and then sewing it to that. I really dislike that practice. So, again, by opening the apron, opening a couple of pleats, I've gained like 6 inches, lost an inch and gained like 6 inches. So I'm going to reshape this apron to his new proper dimensions, and then recycle this, sew this in place. He had, the buckles and straps were actually pretty good, which surprised me a bit. But this, from being a 3-buckle kilt, 3-strap kilt, will be 2 on either side, because that is sufficient. So there we go. It's going to look a heck of a lot better when it's done, and it's going to fit. So hooray for me. So thank you for tuning in again. Be safe, wash your hands, be nice to each other. Cheers.